Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 series, Rescue the Rockies. And the 2037 to 2038 free agency period is about to get underway today. Don't think we're going to be very significant players in free agency this time around. We do have about $17 million to spend, so while we couldn't really play at the top end of the market unless we make some significant moves. We can certainly be players in the mid to lower end of the market, and that is something that could emerge over the next few months. But we are a team that has won 5 straight World Series at this point. Didn't really lose much off of the roster this year. The 2 most significant losses that we have as we head into free agency are our longtime closer, who had turned into a left-handed specialist out of the bullpen for us, Wellington Herrera, and then Rosnil DePaula, who's been a solid infielder for us, a starter at times and kind of a super utility guy at times over the past few years. Let both of them move on at the beginning of this offseason. Ted Miller, one of our top home run hitters, somewhat surprisingly opted into a qualifying offer that we made to him for over $21 million a year. So that limited our financial flexibility a bit, but it did also keep this team largely together as we try to guide the squad back to the playoffs again next year. So don't necessarily think we're going to be doing anything too significant. Taking a look at the free agent class and who is available. Got good advice from Avery Shaham, Raven Spawn 3 and Undercover Boomer about Jason House, who was a pretty young and talented infielder that had somehow made it to free agency when the Cubs did not make a arbitration offer to him. So we took their advice and just went into commissioner mode and sent him back to the Chicago Cubs organization where he is right now. Certainly the prize of this free agency class is going to be Connor Kimo, two-way player looking for close to $80 million a year. Kimo is a guy who has been with the White Sox throughout his career, faced him in 4 consecutive World Series before this season, hit .270 with 26 homers and 83 ribbies and a WAR of 4.7 at the plate and in the field this year. And then pitching-wise, this past season, he won a career-high 14 games, 14-10 record with a 4.24 ERA, pitched over 170 innings with 32 or more starts for the 4th straight year, and put up a WAR of 2.7 on the mound. He is certainly the prize of this free agent class. Tend to think he could end up with the New York Yankees, who, as some of you have noted, has a ton of money to spend this offseason. If one of these big-time players happens to linger on the market, always willing to try to bring more talent into our organization. Right now, we're just focused on bringing in a few guys to minor league contracts to hopefully bolster the upper levels of the organization and backfill for some players who we lost this season. Still waiting for a scouting report on the starting pitcher, Huang Ou-Yang. The Taipei import is 30 years old. Certainly looks like he could be a very good major league pitcher. $25.5 million, a little bit out of our price range at this point, and not necessarily a huge need for us, but there certainly are reasons to keep an eye on him, and you can never have too much pitching. So if the price for him ends up coming down a bit, certainly someone that we could consider going after. But with the number of younger pitchers who we have in the higher levels of our minor leagues, tend to think that we're not going to be particularly ambitious in the free agent market this offseason. And one quick programming note before we start moving through this off season. Likely we'll try to move through the winter meetings, the Rule 5, and hopefully get all the way to the international free agent signing period beginning this episode, but you never know what's going to happen. But did want just a little advice if anyone's willing to share it in the comment section to this episode. Have been thinking about starting another series on the channel, not in OOTP. We're going to continue playing with these Rockies. Hopefully we'll see the likes of Leo Martinez and Kevin Roberts Jr. through their entire careers, hopefully with the Rockies, and hopefully joining some of the greats of the game with what they're able to achieve. But have been thinking about starting a series in another sports game. Don't know if I really have the time or interest to do it, but it's been a few years since I was doing a franchise hockey series regularly. Still like that game. Considering FM26 also, although the reviews for FM26 that I've seen have been very mixed as far as the progress that they've made over the last couple of years with the new Unity engine, and then also just some questionably UI decisions that they made. Dog Massa, I know, is among, I'm sure, many of you who are listening and watching who have started playing FM26. Previously, I had even put together some episodes in a series a few years ago at this point with Tennis Manager. So if anyone has real strong opinions between franchise hockey, Tennis Manager, FM26 for a potential second sport and a second series to do alongside these Rockies, would love to hear them. If there's other sports simulation or even strategy type games that you think are really interesting, would love to hear some suggestions in the comment section to this episode as well. Don't know, like I said, that I'm ultimately going to have enough time to do something else, but it's, I guess, technically mid-November, and it's also Veterans Day here on November 11th. So happy Veterans Day to all of the proud veterans out there around the world, particularly here in the United States. But we are under snow already where I am living, and think there's going to be a long, cold, dark, possibly boring winter ahead of me, and may be able to find enough time to do another series, and would love some ideas from the worldwide scouting department. Generally, we haven't had particularly robust viewership in any of those series that I've done outside of Out of the Park baseball. So it does get a little dispiriting at time to, put out an episode and have 50 people watch it or something. So don't know that I'll end up doing something else, because obviously this is not a big channel. It is not a professionally done channel, as you know. It's basically just me playing the game and interacting with the worldwide scouting department and having a good time. But sometimes the validation, I guess, of having a larger audience like we do here in OOTP makes it a little more interesting to do the episodes. Sometimes it feels like you're just kind of yelling into the abyss when I'm doing some of the other sports series and there's just not a lot of interest. So I'd like to try to avoid that if possible. And if I do something, hopefully end up doing something that's interesting to some of the viewers of this series. And then hopefully it would be something that would find some viewers interested in those other sports as well. So if you have ideas, please let me know. And we've simmed ahead about a week and a half since the last time we checked in. We've started to sign a few minor league free agents, continuing to aggressively scout the international amateur free agents. Mentioned earlier that I thought the Yankees could be strong players for Connor Kimo, as Ty84 Moss had noted in the comments to the last episode. The Yankees have a ton of money available. But Mr. Kimo is going to be moving to the National League to the Philadelphia Phillies. We had talked about the fact he was looking for $79 million a year. Very surprising that he signed so quickly, given that was his demand. $42.5 million for a year for the next 4 years, and then he's $39.5 million for the final 3 years of the contract if he doesn't opt out at age 32. So actually seems like a pretty solid deal for the Phillies to get him at that price. Looks like he would consider a trade to us down the line if that's something that we're interested in pursuing. But for the foreseeable future, Connor Kimo, the two-way star, is going to be a member of the Philadelphia Phillies. And we've simmed ahead another several days to the beginning of the winter meetings. We're going to spend a little time offline seeing if there might be a trade or two to make. Certainly would expect that we may receive some offers in the coming days. Not necessarily expecting that we're going to end up doing much of anything, though. As I said, I like our team. We're bringing back most of it, and kind of like the idea of maintaining some financial flexibility for next season if we do end up having some injury issues and we need to rent a player or two come June and July to keep us competitive, but don't necessarily feel like there's anything earth-shattering that we're going to be looking to do during these winter meetings or over the next month or two. We will briefly check in on what's going on in the development lab, though, and you can see we've got 5 of the 8 players who are in the development lab or 4 of the 8 players, if I could count, who are in the development lab are frustrated. Melvin Reyes is on track and increasing his pitch movement, as is Jesse Hoffmeister. Jake Lyons is excelling in a control program, and David Marsh is on track in a bat speed program. So looks like we're potentially getting some decent results from some of the younger players who are in the development lab here in the 2037 to 2038 offseason. And we have finally gotten our scouting report on Huang Ou-Yang, the pitcher also known as Bleeder. You can see his demand is headed up to almost $39 million a year. Do still like him, but again, he's definitely a luxury, and he'd be a lot more expensive than any other player on our roster. So 6 years at almost $39 million a year for a guy who's already 30 years old. Not something we can really afford to do anyways, but I also don't think it's anything that's particularly necessary at this point. And we've made it to the Rule 5 draft. Probably not going to be particularly active in the Rule 5 this year. We had 39 guys on our 40-man roster. We ended up adding 2 players to the 40-man, so we already had to cut a player. Very conceivable that we end up losing an interesting player or 2 in the Rule 5, but we've got a loaded roster at this point. The 2 guys we added were a couple of pitchers. Eric Schweitzer, the guy that we picked up in the Drew Romo trade with the Chicago White Sox over 4 years ago at this point, the number 67 in prospect in baseball. I think the 21-year-old could be a pretty interesting reliever in the not-too-distant future. We've been starting him just to ensure regular playing time and more innings, but when we look at his stamina, his future is certainly going to be in the bullpen. And then we also added Ryan Bull to the 40-man roster, a 5th-round pick of ours in 2034. He's dealing with a torn rotator cuff that he suffered when he was promoted to Double-A Hartford. Was 1-0 with an ugly 6.75 ERA in the small sample size there. We will, once we can put people on the IL, be putting him on the 60-day IL once we get to the beginning of next year, and we can actually open up a spot on the 40-man roster when we do that. I think it was pretty unlikely that he was going to be picked, but he still does have potential to be a pretty interesting pitcher, and we didn't want to risk losing him, even though anyone who picked him up would likely have just been putting him on the 60-man IL in their organization as well. And as anticipated, we did not end up picking anyone in the Rule 5 draft. We did lose one player, starting pitcher Maximo Gonzalez, a 30-year-old who had been in our minor league organization for some time, 12-4 last year with a 3.82 ERA in AAA Albuquerque, so put up a 3.3 WAR for us there. Does have those extreme ground ball tendencies and good stamina, but with his profile, kind of a back end of the rotation type of pitcher, and think that we have plenty of guys in Double and AAA who have better current abilities and certainly higher ceilings than him. So there was never any real strong consideration on my end to protect Gonzalez and put him on the 40-man. But he could be competing against us frequently next season as a member of the Dodgers organization. And we've simmed ahead close to another week to New Year's Eve 2037, getting ready for 2038 tomorrow. Got our mid-semester report cards on the players in the development lab that we had checked in on earlier. Unfortunately, an additional player is frustrated at this point. Jake Lyons continues to excel. Jesse Hoffmeister and Melvin Reyes both remain on track with their pitch movement programs. But Snacks Marsh has fallen off since the last time we checked in and is now frustrated in his bat speed program. You can see everybody else who was previously frustrated is frustrated as well. So looking like it may be a situation where we only have 3 successful programs this time through the development lab. And certainly Melvin Reyes is just barely on track at this point. Reyes, you may remember, is a young pitcher, international amateur free agent signing from back in 2031, who looks like he could be a pretty important right-handed arm in our bullpen, like his durability, throws in the triple digits. But he was not good in his major league debut this year. I guess technically his major league debut was the end of 2036, but this was the first extended action he had in the majors, and he put up a 6.42 ERA over 33 2/3 innings of work while walking 19 batters. Certainly would be helpful if that pitch movement program ends up successful for Luisito Reyes. And we have simmed ahead to the start of the international amateur free agent signing period. So that is where we'll finish this episode. We will take a look at the 10 prospects that we have been most focused on, and then we'll finish things up and turn things over for hopefully some advice from the Worldwide Scouting Department on which direction to go. Not a ton of financial flexibility for us this time around. $4.9 million to spend, which is as little as anybody in baseball, and there's teams with $1 million more than us, including the A's, who we faced in the World Series last year, as well as our divisional rivals from San Francisco. So we can try to play at the top end of the market. Some years being very aggressive for one guy has worked out well for us. Last year, not quite the case. 3 pitchers that we have been targeting more than others. Starting pitcher Juan Reyes, 16-year-old right-hander. Like the high adaptability and work ethic, pretty good stamina, pretty good at holding on runners. The issue is whether he's really going to have a third pitch with that splitter, and his overall profile is kind of a back end of the rotation type starter if he reaches his full potential. With a $2.8 million demand, think it's unlikely we go aggressively after him. Another starting pitcher, Israel Garcia, also high adaptability and work ethic, very good stamina and holding on runners, has a potential 4-pitch arsenal, but those pitches are all expected to be slightly or well below major league quality. Does potentially have outstanding control and decent movement on his pitches, but the stuff for the 17-year-old is going to be an issue. $2.2 million. I think he's more of a fallback option if we decide to go with a more diversified class or we swing and miss in terms of a few potential other players. The biggest demand among the pitchers, $3 million for Manny Hernandez. And the 16-year-old out of Mexico is certainly the prize pitcher in this pool. Like the high leadership, outstanding stamina. He's fine at holding on runners. Ground ball tendencies, we think he can ultimately top triple digits on the radar gun. He's got a potential 5-pitch arsenal, although the sinker and change have a lot of work ahead of him, but still looks like with the fastball splitter cutter combination, he could still have 3 very good pitches. Think that his stuff, his movement, and his control could all be well above average if he reaches his full potential. Is only 16 years old. Pretty decent to have 35 stuff, 35 movement, and 50 already pitcher BABIP at the age of 16. So Tucker Hernandez is a pretty solid looking prospect with his price tag relative to Garcia and Reyes, as well as some other players out there. Think if we're going to go big in a pitcher, Manny Hernandez certainly the way to go. Take a look at a couple of these cheap relievers just as other options. Victor Ruiz, some positive personality traits. Think that he could be a pretty solid relief pitcher down the line. Has enough stamina that conceivably he could be a 5+ inning starter if things worked out well. He's a guy to certainly consider with that low price tag, but he's got a lot of work to do compared to somebody like Fernandez in terms of his development as of today. And then Miguel de la Cruz, also pretty cheap. Another guy who's looking more like a true reliever and doesn't necessarily have the highest ceiling of any player out there. And the 7 batters that we have been scouting the most aggressively all have pretty big price tags on them, and they're some of the top prospects in this pool, at least according to our scout, which isn't surprising. Ignacio Lopez, a 16-year-old third baseman, looking for $2 million, so he's one of the cheaper position players that we're looking at. I think the contact and the gap power could both be really good. The speed, not incredible, and has a third baseman's profile, which is certainly what we think he's going to play. Don't think that he's going to be right on the top of our list. $3 million demand from first baseman Edgar Monzon. Like the potential for well above average home run power and the ability to draw some walks, like the high loyalty and especially the high adaptability and baseball IQ. Not a ton of speed. Not a particularly good fielder. The contact and the gap power about average, but certainly Monzon looks like someone who could hit a lot of home runs and draw a lot of walks. Center fielder Alonso Hernandez looking for $2.2 million. The 16-year-old is kind of the opposite of Monzon, potentially outstanding contact and gap power. The home run power in the eye, not quite as special. Looks like a competent defensive outfielder, okay speed, although his base running instincts aren't great. But the left-handed center fielder, certainly an interesting prospect. And then the 4 highest end prospects all looking between 2.6 and 3.2 million a year. So I think if we go in any of these directions, the plan is probably to just offer every penny that we can of the $4.88 million and try to lock one of these players up. Third baseman Juan Rivero, pretty well balanced hitting profile. The home run power in the eye, only average potential. The contact could be very good, and the gap power could be exceptional. Also, a guy with outstanding speed and pretty good base running instincts already. Looks like a solid looking defensive infielder, probably more of a third baseman than anything else for Fro Rivera. Juan Gonzalez, left fielder. The contact and the gap power kind of in the average to slightly above average range, but the home run power in the eye, both potentially exceptional. Some positive personality traits. No hands Gonzalez, not the greatest infielder or not the greatest outfielder in the world. I'm sure he's a brutal infielder with the nickname No Hands, but certainly looks like a very interesting bat to consider. Gonzalez looking for $2.6 million. And then there are two everyday player prospects that our scout sees as having 80 potential. One is the center fielder Luis Rivas, very good speed, competent corner outfielder, high baseball IQ. The contact in the eye, both well above average. The gap power, exceptional potential there. Home run power, average. Certainly a pretty interesting left-handed hitting outfield prospect. Happy of Manayunk is his only an OOTP type nickname. And shortstop Alberto Limon, also known as Pringles, pretty interesting looking prospect, almost 17 years old, pretty solid defensive looking prospect, like the high adaptability, the speed only average, but the bat is, to me, the most interesting in this class. Think the contact can be a bit above average, and think the gap power, the home run power, and the eye can all be borderline exceptional. So when you look at what Pringles potentially brings defensively with that bat, he is certainly a pretty interesting player to consider with that $3 million demand. Honestly, the other highly regarded guy with a $3 million demand, Manny Hernandez, those are probably my two favorite players from this all too brief and all too quick initial look at the pool. I'll certainly be spending some more time with it over the next few days before we have to start making some decisions, and appreciate any thoughts from the Worldwide Scouting Department on who you might go after and what your strategy might be in this international amateur free agent class. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.